Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we're going to talk about one of the big ones, the newest album from Kendrick Lamar, titled To Pimp a Butterfly. Here's one of the big ones. Ever since I started this channel, I've been asked to give my opinion on Kendrick Lamar, flagship rapper from Top Dog Entertainment and one of the most critically acclaimed and respected rappers of the past 5 years. Hell, in the industry, period. A dexterous lyricist with a gift for balancing conscious lyricism with incredible wit and often a lot of humor, often paired with top-of-the-line production, he's been a rapper who's been very hungry to seize the top spot. And from the critically acclaimed Good Kid, Mad City to the control verse that set the internet on fire in 2013, it looks like he's been one of the very few rappers who'd actually have a shot of getting there. So what do I think of him? Well, I hate to say it, but I've got to echo so many other critics in my praise to the guy. There's not a lot of new things I can say about Kendrick that haven't already been said. His debut album, Section 80, was startlingly smart and potent. A gunshot of social commentary fused with impressively well-written bars and an elastic flow that really started to set the stage of who Kendrick Lamar was. A genuinely good guy. Even a leader stuck in a toxic, decaying system that seemed engineered to destroy the hopes and dreams of young black men. What always caught my eye about Kendrick was his gift for storytelling. Not just in crafting a great scene, but fully fleshed out characters and stories in that unsettling world and then framing them excellently. And then came Good Kid, Mad City. And somehow it was even better. Not only was the production better, a slick and impressively modern brand of West Coast beats, but the characters were better defined, the narrative was a lot more cohesive and tightly written, and Kendrick's bars were stronger than ever as things tumbled towards darkness. Hell, even guests like Drake, they stepped up their game for some of their best bars yet. Many people claim that this album was one of the best of 2012 and damn near a classic, and while I think that time will tell on the latter, it's a damn potent hip-hop release that's astoundingly good and easily one of the best of 2012, bar none. So as such, there's been a lot of conversation on where Kendrick Lamar is going to take his material next, especially given his interviews and his lead-off singles for this album. Many people were expecting Kendrick to get more political and angry with his next album, or at least more conscious, and with the lead-off singles like I and The Blacker the Berry, it looked like we were going to be getting that. But it also looked like Kendrick was going to push his production beyond typical modern West Coast instrumentation, which was perplexing to say the least. So when To Pimp a Butterfly dropped early, I definitely check it out and dig in deep. What do we get with it? Well, on some level, I got exactly what I expected, but on another level, Kendrick opted to go for something bigger and more ambitious than I ever would have expected from him across the board, and yet framed through a more introspective and personal story than one might expect. On some level, it's more of Kendrick's story at the end than ever before, but the scope is simultaneously more emotionally driven and intimate, and yet paired with something that's bigger than ever. And all of it is paired with production that's more eclectic, varied, experimental, and yet drenched in the history of black music more than any other hip-hop record I reckon will be dropped this year. So, did Kendrick Lamar manage to top Good Kid, Mad City with To Pimp a Butterfly? That, I reckon, is a much more complicated question. It ultimately takes away from the fact that this album will likely go down as one of the best of the year, bar none, cause it's goddamn incredible. Seriously, if you haven't heard it, go listen, it's amazing. It almost leaves me at a bit of a loss of where to start. Kendrick's always been a great rapper, but if there's one thing that this album displays, it's his versatility and his emotional range. Those who are just going in expecting Kendrick to spit hard bars, they might be a little disappointed, but that's because he's aiming to paint a more complicated picture. There is anger and passion to be sure, but more of this album is immersed in the creeping depression that touches so many songs as Kendrick's disillusionment grows in not just the music industry, but the systematic racism that he sees on a much bigger scale that he can't see his words managing to change. And sure, there were moments of depression on earlier albums, but his choice to avoid any sort of pop or mainstream framework for his songs makes the problem seem that much more implacable and insurmountable by a common system. That said, there are points where Kendrick contorts his voice for effect a little bit too far, at least for me. Most notably in the drunken crying flow he has on the back half of You. I get that it's supposed to sound rough and awkward and uncomfortable, but he might have succeeded a little bit too well there, because the back half of that song, I'm sorry, it doesn't quite work for me. But if that's the only moment I can take issue with Kendrick's delivery, considering how often he pushes it and switches it up, that's impressive. And what's almost more impressive is that he managed to ring top-of-the-line guest appearances from almost everybody again. And it's a much different guest list than the last time. The only guest rapper on this album who is criminally underrated at female MC Rhapsody, who drops a characteristically strong verse on Complexion, but I'm more astounded that Kendrick managed to snag Snoop Dogg and got him to sound like he was actually trying flying. When was the last time that happened? But then you got the hooks from Bilal and Anna Wise, the always welcome presence of Thundercat on bass and on vocals, the ferocious howls of dancehall DJ Assassin, who throws a ton of fire on the Blacker the Berry, fantastic song, all the way to funk legend George Clinton on the opening track Wesley's Theory. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't surprised to see more of TDE on this album, but then again, this is so much of Kendrick's lonely personal journey that I'd argue they'd be kind of difficult to fit into this record. And nowhere is that journey more emphasized and more personal than in the production. Because if we're looking for one area where this album has such a unique character unlike any others, it'd be here. While of course he gets songs with a distinctive smooth West Coast sound and vibe, Kendrick is casting a much wider net both in his producers and his sound. From the appearance of Flying Lotus to the choice to keep traditional radio-friendly production to a minimum and capturing a plethora of black history in music. The album opens with a bubbling, funky bass line and fragments of horns and squealing synths, and from there it ambles through skittering sax and old school jazz on For Free, before it drops into a killer early to mid-80s funk vibe on King Kunta that's got a groove that could easily rival Uptown Funk for sheer braggadocious flavor. Oh, I love that song. Of course, there's so much more grit and organic texture to Kendrick's productions, as the next few G-Funk inspired productions easily prove, especially on the chimes, skittering keyboards, and the horns on These Walls with the slightly off-kilter choral vocals that almost remind me more of, let's say, late period albums from the Roots, like And Then You Shoot Your Cousin. And the great moments instrumentally in this album, they just keep coming without stopping. The swirling, self-flagellating anger of You with the horns and choppy sampling, the subversive elements of All Right and For Sale with the unsettled vibe and the seductive coos against the warped keyboards, the dusty boom-bap vibe of Momma, the dreary pianos, guitars, and crackling beat of How Much a Dollar Cost and Complexion, the heavier pitch-black dancehall-infused The Blacker the Berry, still damn great song, the smooth-as-hell guitar groove on You Ain't Gotta Lie, the choice to go for a live cut of I for the album that honestly fits the record damn near perfectly. Hell, the one hook I didn't really like on this album was Hood Politics. That's more because I found the hook just a little bit underwritten for Kendrick. In the first verse, not all that impressive. He's written better, which is a real shame because the third verse, absolutely killer. And real props for shouting out Killer Mike on that track. Really dug that. But now, we need to talk about lyrics and themes, because Kendrick is not messing around with either of them. In terms of his wordplay, Kendrick Lamar is damn near untouchable these days. Multisyllabic rhymes that are impressively layered and well structured with a variety of flows, and while he does occasionally rhyme the same word with themselves, which does bug me, the content is often so strong that it can really be overlooked. And that content? Well, on the surface, one could argue that Kendrick went more political and conscious with this record, with pretty open criticisms of an exploitative record industry and society, and while listening public who swallow up overblown shallow crap, and yet are very quick to drop the hammer down if the environment or personality that shaped that music steps out of line, or that person succumbs to the temptations of extreme wealth and women that form their own brand of bondage. And Kendrick's not shy about dragging the obvious comparisons of slavery to the forefront, with language that is provocative enough to likely raise eyebrows in the white and black communities alike, although he purposefully frames himself as the main culprit here, showing just how enticing Lucy could be with her gifts, especially in the face of that what now depression that Kendrick faces now having made it to the top. Now this is where the real dramatic arc of this album fully materializes, and where the real gut punch is starting to hit. But Kendrick, he throws everything on the line, and he's not afraid to call himself a hypocrite, which is pretty powerful. He talks about the distance that builds up between himself and his family, increasingly tight walls of a cocoon that surrounds him, his own failures for not doing more, and his own hypocrisy, and how easy it would be to take the easy way out, either through sex, wealth, or a Glock. From there, Kendrick, he ventures home. He's trying to find another anchor point, something that he can do to free himself and come back to the community, but only feel that because of his success and his hard work, he has further isolated himself from all of them, and he's racked with a brand of survivor's guilt in comparison with those who face a broken system every single day because, well, he made it out. And one of the most powerful things about this album is that Kendrick doesn't have an easy answer, which brings especially to light in the heartbreaking How Much a Dollar, a song where he avoids giving money to a homeless junkie who turns out to be God himself. And it's one of the songs that crystallizes one of the primary metaphors and messages of the album. Yes, giving something back or giving of yourself might bear no fruit or change nothing of the larger system, but it can change lives on a smaller scale and bring you to some vestige of redemption and happiness, and that means so much more. And it's not just a message for Kendrick himself, but the black community as a whole, to stop focusing focusing on pettiness and the pointlessness of hood politics, or irrelevant differences in complexion created to divide a community instead of unite it, or a larger system that frankly doesn't care, or only cares enough to tempt and exploit, and instead focus on finding real enlightenment and passion within, because that's what matters. And what I absolutely love about this album is that he doesn't condescend to his audience. He doesn't get preachy because he's framing it all as his struggle too. He simply presents the options and gives them a way to improve themselves for their own benefit, the same thing he's trying to do. Even rappers who pitch a shallower message is on You Ain't Gotta Lie. And I didn't mind the positive message of When I was released as a single, but on the album Kendrick reinterprets it with a live cut. He interprets it as a call to action because it's not like the system is breaking down without that action. Repurposing hip-hop language in his words, and its most well-known word, into something that's much more powerful and much more empowering. It's taking the language back. And all of it leads to the final track, Mortal Man, where that call is placed to Kendrick's fans and to himself. Would you follow him if he rose above the sloppy stuff and the ignorance, threw aside the temptation and went for something more? Or if his leadership led him down a pretty rough road, could he hold up to it? He's not shy about dragging up the list of names of those abandoned by their fans and their followers and had to walk that hard road alone. It's also where that arc reaches its conclusion, punctuated by the completion of a poem that Kendrick recited at the end of many songs on this album, adding a line with every single song that touched on the next track to come, adding a wonderful sense of cohesion here. And it's a poem that he was reading to, and here I was shocked because very few other rappers would have dared to do this. The late Tupac Shakur, where they sampled an interview from 1994 where Kendrick now asks the questions and Tupac gives his answers. And then the second poem that he includes, where Kendrick sums up the title of this album To Pimp a Butterfly, with the butterfly being the enlightened soul, the caterpillar are those that would exploit it, the superego and the id, if you want to go Freudian here, and the cocoon, the system that perpetuate those walls and prevents them, that allows the butterfly to be pimped. Only when one breaks out of the system can they both be free, inspire other caterpillars to transform. And yet, on some level, caterpillar and butterfly are the exact same person. After all, transcendence only has value when set against and placed in respect to humanity. And that brings a message of universality that anyone can get there. Because the spirits, we ain't even really rapping. We just letting our dead homies tell stories for us. But when Kendrick asks Tupac whether he agrees, he gets no answer. Kendrick's alone. He's leaving the question hanging over whether the legend would have agreed or thought the system can't be fixed. There's no moment of solace or clarity, no God to anoint Kendrick's path or the path of any other. The choice, as it's always been on this album, is a lonely one. It's up to Kendrick, the audience, and the world around us to make that choice. Look, I'm not one to call an album a classic right after it gets released. Time and history are more of a judge of that than I will ever be. But there are records I can say will be transformative and influential in their genre, if only because of their innovative spirit, intellect, and breathtaking depth. To Pimp a Butterfly by Kendrick Lamar is one of those albums. A sort of astoundingly well-produced, brilliantly written, impressively layered, and heartbreakingly powerful record that aims higher than Good Kid, Mad City and gets there too. I will not say it's perfect. That 10 out of 10 score for me, it's a very high bar, and very few albums I've ever gotten I probably can count it on one hand. But Kendrick's got damn close with this one. A very strong 9 out of 10 with this, and the highest of my recommendations. So far, 2015 has been a damn great year for music, especially hip-hop, and Kendrick just raised the bar again. Stage is set, folks. Let's release those butterflies. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. Yeah, long review, but I had a lot to say, because this album, it got to me. It is something special. So yeah, if there's anything else you want me to review, or anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. Until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.